Good evening. Take two. That's what happens when you're getting older and you have a lot of old school names in your mind about who's called what and what's called who. So this is a presentation of a sculpture I did some time ago uh, called Ursula's Pendant, and she is a nanny to Cyclopean orphans. You heard me right. Orphans that are Cyclops. And ultimately, this is a ceremonial piece of jewelry that was given to her. And so I'm going to switch over to it because it seems that the algorithm complains that there's too much verbiage before the presentation. So trying to obey the gods. So here we go. So I presented this piece old school manually about a week ago when my cam situation was a situation. And I was kind of desperate to get out some kind of sculptural representation in video form. So here it is on its stand, sitting all by itself in my company. So the pendant comes off this stand. The two long bones in the back have been sculpted at the tops and then hand fused into this solid vertebra pewter base. So there's not a whole lot of story around Ursula. Ultimately, it's left to the imagination. And she, again, is a nanny to Cyclopean orphans. And this was presented to her in honor of her service in office. It's about 14 inches tall and 7 inches wide and about maybe 4 to 5 inches deep. The base is a scale 1-to-1 vertebra that I found way up north on a beach in California. Still pretty sure I still have the vertebra somewhere. And I did a silicon mold of it and then cast directly into the mold. And within the mold, I had bone fragments and maybe some semi-precious stones. I'm not sure, but that's the result. And then again, I went back with soldering and integrated the bones in with the vertebra to be rigid enough to give support to the piece, and then contoured the tops of the bones to match the silhouette of the piece. So we have basically one of one. This is a piece that will never exist beyond itself. A lot of custom things happened with it, and the back side of it is all pretty much stream of consciousness, me salvaging the back of this pendant. I cast it horizontal, which at the time I did not realize I didn't have the right venting for it. And so ultimately the air in the mold got trapped just enough at the very top to not bring out the detail. So I need to take the mold and change it a bit. Not the actual silicon mold, but the mother mold that's made of plaster. I'm going to make some channels in a little different way and cast it vertically next time. So there's a whole backside to this piece that you can't see because it's not there. And it resembles the front more so than what's there right now. So the front turned out perfect. No air bubbles per usual. It's something advantageous about pewter is that it's not as buoyant as most sculptural metals when they're at melting temperature. Like aluminum is around 1800, and bronze is around 2100, which makes them very volatile and buoyant. And less capable of pushing out air bubbles. Um, it's my intuition, although I'm not a molecular scientist, but my sense of it is that the molecules are closer or not as close apart. Um, okay, let me start that all over again. So the molecules are further apart in something more buoyant and uh, volatile versus pewter that melts at 400 degrees. And so when it goes into the mold, its molecules are more compact and its density is not as kinetic, let's say. So it drops in a more gravitas way, and its main function is to eradicate all voids immediately, like within milliseconds, because it sets up so quickly. You can pour pewter into a mold and break it out in 5 to 10 minutes. Uh, this would not be the case with uh, cast iron, bronze, aluminum, things like this. So it starts to solidify very, very quickly. So with this piece in the front, all those details, that's all original. That there's no filling of air bubbles or pockets. And then I went back in with semi-precious stones, other objects like the hummingbirds at the top and the crystal sphere. The crystal sphere is loose. You can spin it around, but it doesn't fall out, of course, because it's held in by the beaks of the hummingbird, and then you can see it in the middle there, a small protrusion that comes up from a nest that it's in. And the back side of it, I composed to sort of a little bit of a Dungeons and Dragons vibe with the dungeon door at the in the very middle, and there's some shark's teeth back there. Here in the front, you have a tourmaline uh, oval, and then some buffalo teeth. There's some tiger's eye and meteorite as well in the piece. I think there's meteorite in there. Um, I may be thinking of another sculpture. The bones, if I'm not mistaken, those are deer bone that I found in the foothills out in nature. And then the two short bones at the top are some marine mammal that I also found on the beach. That's a moonstone, some more turquoise. As I said, there's a shark's teeth in the middle. This was a deeply, for me at least, a deeply ritualistic piece. I felt like I had a kind of an assignment of sorts to make this piece. So sometimes I'm inspired simply by the level of fascination that washes over a project. The, for lack of a better word, the vibe of the inspiration and what it gives me as I complete task after task. It builds. Um, Down at the bottom, in a sort of a circular, shadowy area, there's a little skull. There's a little bit of a Victorian goth vibe in the back there, if that makes sense. And again, the pendant lifts off of the base, which you can see in the other video. I don't want to get up and interrupt the composition of this video by fooling around with it. So ultimately, I want to maintain composure and have it as a display video. And this is it. The original was done in microcrystalline wax, um, the pendant itself. If you're interested in, if you're a sculptor and interested in microcrystalline wax, it's often under the name of brown microcrystalline wax. It's sort of an old school medium. I've still found it unrivaled by any sculptural medium in its class as far as what it gives, and that includes monster clay. I tried monster clay once, and it just doesn't suit me. So I've bought enough of this wax that I don't really need to buy anymore because I recycle all of the original sculptures that I make. And I made a slab mold about an inch and a half thick by 12 by 2 feet. And I just pour my own slabs and out of the recycled. And sometimes I add some paraffin and some denser foundry wax, like red jewelry wax, in order to um, make it a little bit more firm. There's a certain consistency that I like to sculpt with. And I'll be displaying some original sculptures as well in videos coming up and show you what the original medium looks like out in the wild. The hummingbirds were pre-existing. I have the molds for them, but they're vintage. Sometimes I'll add an object in um, to a composition, pre-existing object. But that's the only. Well, actually, they're not the only ones. Those are pre-existing, and the dungeon door was a one-off. It was like a uh, old school artifact that I found amongst the pewter hoard, and so I just embedded it in the pewter and then fused it with a soldering iron. And everything else, all the semi-precious stones and the teeth and the bones and things, again, were all hand soldered and locked in place with these tabs Pewter's very good at that. It's very forgiving with organic materials because it's such a low um, melting temperature. Not that some bone was embedded in the molten pewter, but in this piece, fusing around bone and things, there's no organic damage to the bone or the teeth. Sometimes there's a little bit of resin that gets along the edges of the soldering stalactites, and you can just go back in and with like an X-Acto blade and just sort of gently scrape it off, or very fine sandpaper. Bone is pretty forgiving by like when you need to remove micro layers. Um, it is so fine, like the dust. You should be doing it outside wearing a respirator because the dust is not good to inhale. And maybe even if you're doing a big project involving bone, set it up outside with a fan blowing away from you so that when you're dremeling or sanding, it's blowing the particles outwards and away from you, um, while also wearing a mask. And make sure the mask is snug fitting. And yeah, I'm pretty sure there's no meteorite in this piece. There's another stone, but I can't think of its name. It's sort of a odd word. So this is Ursula's pendant. Thank you for supporting the channel, and like and subscribe. Please share and comment if you want to know more about this process. And yes, this piece is available for the right home. I'm very close to all these pieces and have mixed emotions about just setting them up in a gallery, not knowing where they're going ultimately. And so I'm experimenting with YouTube and to see if I can develop a following and possibly some interested collectors. And all these pieces get custom crated and packed by myself uh, in a very OCD, motherly way. So this will arrive intact and completely sound. I'll switch back over here for a moment. So that was Ursula's pendant, the Cyclopean Nanny to Cyclopean Orphans. Or I should say, the Nanny to Cyclopean Orphans. In the back of my mind, I believe that she may be Cyclopean, but I'm not 100% sure, which is still kind of a curious thing to present my imagination to, that it's not altogether, hasn't altogether resolved itself. So I wish you a good night, and again, thank you for your support.